The metal latch snapped behind me, sharp and quick, as someone pushed the pool gate closed harder than necessary. I felt my shoulders stiffen before I even turned. The sun was bright on the water, kids splashing, pop music echoing off the patio walls. But that sound, that sharp snap, cut straight through everything. It always does when someone is annoyed because of me. I had just stepped out from the changing room, towel in hand, the two-piece tucked neatly under my shirt until I felt ready. My granddaughter's laugh reached me first, light and unbothered, the kind of sound young people make when the world still feels wide open. "There you are," she called, waving me over, her eyes sparkling with the same mischief she had at 5 years old. But before I could take more than 2 steps, my daughter's voice sliced between us. "Mother, seriously?" 8 words, soft in volume, brutal in meaning. I stopped mid-stride. The heat from the pavement rose through my sandals, the fabric of my cover-up suddenly too thin. Around us, the college kids kept talking, the scent of coconut sunscreen drifting in the air, but Brigitte's eyes were on me, slowly moving from my hair to my arms, to the outline of the bikini beneath the cotton. "You're pushing it," she murmured without a smile. "At your age?" Her words didn't shout. They didn't need to. They hit the same way a cold hand presses firmly between your shoulder blades. Quiet, but enough to make your breath catch. And for a moment, I just stood there, towel clenched, feeling 19 pairs of eyes that didn't even exist, only hers. A burst of laughter erupted near the diving board, sharp, sudden, too loud for how close it was. I flinched before I could stop myself. The sound rolled over the pool like a wave and faded, but the sting it left in my chest stayed. I tightened the knot of my towel and forced my feet to move, even though the ground seemed to tilt with every step. Kelsey reached me first. She wrapped her arms around my waist, warm and genuine, her damp hair leaving little droplets on my shirt. "Grandma, come sit with us. You look great today." Her voice was soft, as if she sensed the air shifting, trying to anchor me back to the moment. Before I could answer, Brigitte appeared beside her, arms crossed, chin lifted just enough to make her message clear without saying a word. "You should have worn something more appropriate," she whispered, her breath brushing my ear. "These kids don't need to see all that." All that. As if my body, this body that carried her, fed her, held her through nightmares, was some kind of offense. A group of college boys splashed each other loudly behind us. One of them glanced over, barely a second, barely anything, but Brigitte inhaled sharply as if she'd caught him committing a sin. "See? This is exactly what I meant," she muttered. "You're embarrassing yourself." The words landed low, steady, meant to bruise without leaving marks. Kelsey looked between us, confusion tightening her smile. "Mom, she looks amazing. I picked it. I wanted her to feel good." Brigitte didn't even look at her. "I wore a one-piece for a reason." A breeze lifted the corner of my towel, brushing the back of my knee. My throat tightened. Not with shame exactly, but with something heavier. Something like the ache of being told you're too old for your own skin. The edge of the pool chair scraped against the concrete. Slow, gritty, unmistakable. It was the kind of sound that makes every nerve in your back straighten. I lowered myself onto the seat anyway, keeping the towel wrapped tightly around my waist. The sun was warm, but the space between me and my daughter felt colder than the shade. Kelsey plopped down beside me, her legs dripping water, leaving dark circles on the cement. She nudged my arm lightly. "Grandma, don't let her get to you. You look adorable." Her voice carried that easy confidence her generation wears like sunscreen. Effortless, protective, sincere. But Brigitte hovered near the snack table, organizing chip bowls with unnecessary precision. Every few seconds she glanced over her shoulder at me. Her jaw clenched. She wasn't done. Not by a long shot. "You really should have asked me before wearing that," she called out, as if commenting on the weather. "It sends..." The wrong message. My chest tightened. What message would that be? I asked quietly. She didn't hesitate. That you're trying too hard. The sentence hit harder than anything loud could have. A woman nearby paused while pouring lemonade. Two teenagers whispered to each other, not about me, just about sunscreen, but the timing was cruel. It made the silence around us heavier. Kelsey straightened, her expression changing, eyes sharpening with something fierce. Mom, seriously. She wore it because I asked her to, because I wanted her to feel confident, not hidden. Brigitte's mouth flattened. Well, confidence doesn't mean showing everything at 67. A small sting pulsed in my throat. It wasn't shame. No, it was the sting of being reduced, narrowed down to a number as if the rest of me didn't exist. I lifted the edge of my towel and let the sun hit my skin. A tiny act, nothing dramatic. But even that made Brigitte inhale sharply, as if I'd crossed an invisible boundary she'd built around who I was allowed to be. A splash erupted behind us, loud, sudden, sending droplets across the back of my chair. I jolted slightly, more from the tension brewing inside me than the water itself. Someone laughed, carefree, unbothered. The world kept spinning normally for everyone except the three of us locked in this quiet, suffocating triangle. Brigitte moved closer, her sandals tapping sharply against the concrete. Mom, I'm saying this kindly, she began, though her tone was anything but. You're drawing attention, and not the good kind. Kelsey's head snapped up. She's not drawing attention, she's literally just sitting here. But Brigitte stepped between us, blocking the sun for a moment. Her shadow fell over my legs, cool and unwelcome. You don't know how people talk, she hissed softly. College boys aren't subtle. They'll stare at anything. There it was, the humiliation, small, quiet, but unmistakable, not shouted, not public, but delivered with the casual cruelty only family can perfect. My fingers curled into the towel. I didn't come here to attract anyone, I murmured. My granddaughter asked me to wear it so she wouldn't feel self-conscious about her own body someday. Brigitte scoffed. That's dramatic. She's 19. She doesn't need her grandmother in a bikini to learn confidence. Kelsey stood abruptly, water dripping from her as she faced her mother. Yes, I do, she shot back. Maybe I needed to see a woman older than 40 feel comfortable. Maybe I needed to know I won't become invisible when I hit your age. Brigitte froze, stunned. Her mouth opened, then closed, as if the words hit a place she didn't expect. A group of girls across the pool began posing for photos, cheering and flipping their hair. A boy shouted something playful at them. Everything around us felt young, bright, loud. And there I was, a 67-year-old woman, apparently too visible for one daughter, yet too invisible for the world she feared I'd embarrass. Kelsey touched my hand gently. You look beautiful, Grandma. I meant that. Her voice softened the sharp edges inside me. But the look Brigitte gave me, tight, simmering, told me this was far from over. A plastic cup toppled off the snack table, hitting the ground with a hollow thud. It wasn't loud, but in the thick silence between us, it sounded like a warning. Brigitte bent to grab it, movements sharp, irritated, as if even the cup was conspiring against her patience. I eased the towel off my lap, letting it rest at my side. My knees caught the sunlight, pale, a little soft, marked by time, but they were mine. I felt the warmth sink into my skin, a small freedom, a small rebellion. Brigitte straightened slowly, eyes narrowing. So that's it? You're just fine with everyone looking? The accusation wasn't in her volume. It was in the way she tilted her head, as if I'd disappointed her by daring to exist outside her script. I'm fine with existing, I replied gently, but that made her flinch. Not visibly, just a twitch at the corner of her mouth, a tiny crack where something old and unsettled lived. Kelsey stepped closer to me again, arms folded. Mom, you act like Grandma showed up in lingerie. It's literally a pool party. Half these kids are wearing less than she is." A group of young women walked past at that exact moment. Bright bikinis, long legs, the easy confidence of youth. One of them smiled at me kindly before heading toward the diving board. Nothing inappropriate, nothing scandalous, just a smile. Brigitte watched them, jaw tightening. "She should have asked," she insisted, voice low. "I'm the host. It reflects on me." There it was. Not modesty, not propriety, control. I felt something shift inside my chest, not anger, not yet, but a slow, steady understanding. This wasn't about my bikini. It wasn't even about age. It was about Brigitte losing the mirror she'd kept me in. The mirror where I stayed small, stayed quiet, stayed older than she wanted to imagine herself becoming. When she looked at me now, she didn't see her mother. She saw her future, a future she wasn't ready to face. Kelsey sat beside me again, her hand finding mine. "Grandma," she murmured, just loud enough for both of us, "I hope I grow up to be exactly like you." Brigitte's breath caught, a quiet, rattled inhale. And just like that, the ground between us shifted. A gust of wind swept across the patio, lifting napkins from the tables and sending them fluttering like startled birds. One landed against my ankle, clinging there for a moment before slipping away. I bent to pick it up, more out of habit than necessity, and when I straightened again, Brigitte was staring at me with an expression I hadn't seen since she was a teenager. Resentful, cornered, afraid of something she couldn't name. "Why can't you just act your age?" she whispered, barely audible over the music. The words weren't meant to wound loudly. They were meant to sink, slow, deep, deliberate. I kept my voice steady. "What does that even mean, Brigitte?" She opened her mouth, closed it, then gestured vaguely at my body. "That, all of that, it's too much." Kelsey let out a short, shocked breath. "Mom, stop. You're being cruel." But Brigitte pressed on, her voice tightening. "Kids are staring. Their parents will talk. And I don't want my daughter's college friends thinking my mother is desperate." The last word hit harder than any earlier critique. Desperate. As if my choice to enjoy the sun on my skin was some plea for attention. As if aging meant vanishing. As if being visible at 67 was a shame. A boy cannonballed into the deep end, water splashed high, catching the light. People cheered. A girl adjusted her bikini top. 2 young men handed out sodas. It was all normal, all ordinary, except for the way my daughter's shame clung to me like a damp cloth. I inhaled slowly, letting the sun warm the center of my chest. "Honey," I said, quiet but firm, "I'm not competing with anyone. I'm not performing. I'm just living." For a moment, something flashed in her eyes. Anger, yes, but underneath it, something softer and raw, something like envy or fear or both twisted together. Then her voice cracked, just barely. "You don't understand," she murmured. "When I look at you like that, I see everything I'm losing." Kelsey froze. I froze. The world seemed to hold its breath, and suddenly, the entire confrontation was no longer about a bikini. It was about time, about youth slipping through her fingers, about motherhood shifting, aging reshaping itself into something she didn't know how to hold. Kelsey reached for her mother's arm. "Mom, I never saw you like that before." But Brigitte stepped back, blinking rapidly as if the truth she'd accidentally spilled was too bright for her own eyes. A chair leg scraped harshly against the concrete, sharp enough to cut through the thick silence that had settled over us. Brigitte sank into it, elbows on her knees, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles blanched. Her shoulders trembled once, barely, but enough for a mother to notice. I shifted toward her, slow, careful, the sun warming my back while something colder gathered between us. Kelsey hovered close, torn between defending me and reaching for her mother. "Brigitte," I said softly. She shook her head quickly, as if the sound of her name made something inside her rattle. Don't, she murmured. I don't want to lecture. I'm not lecturing. You will, she snapped, then caught herself, breath hitching. She looked away toward the pool, toward the laughing teenagers, toward the flash of skin and ease and youth she no longer felt connected to. A girl climbed out of the water near us, slim, bright-eyed, adjusting her swimsuit without a second thought. Brigitte's gaze followed her, and I watched something collapse inside my daughter in real time. Do you know what it's like? She whispered, voice cracking. To walk into a room and feel the air pass right through you? To know you've become background? Kelsey froze. My heart clenched. Brigitte exhaled shakily. And then I look at you, 67, wearing something I wouldn't dare to wear at 44, and everyone looks at you like you belong, like you're allowed to be seen. Her voice thinned. It makes me feel pathetic. The honesty hit harder than her cruelty ever did. I reached out, letting my hand hover near hers, close enough to offer, distant enough not to intrude. Baby, you're not invisible. You're tired, you're scared, but you're not invisible. A tear slipped down her cheek, fast, rebellious, not meant to be seen. She wiped it away angrily. I didn't want Kelsey to see me like this. She sees you, I whispered. She always has. Kelsey's voice trembled. Mom, I never thought you were less. I thought you were strong. I still do. Brigitte looked between us, her mother in a bikini, her daughter glowing with youth, and let out a small, broken breath. It wasn't surrender, not fully, but something in her softened, just enough for the tightness in her jaw to release. Across the pool, the music shifted to something slower, warmer. A breeze brushed past us, carrying the scent of sunscreen and chlorine and a sweetness I couldn't name. And for the first time all afternoon, my daughter didn't flinch when she looked at me. The water rippled with a soft, steady rhythm as someone eased into the shallow end, their movements calm against all the noise that had been swirling inside us. I watched the reflection dance across the tiles, small fragments of light shifting like they were trying to stitch something back together. Brigitte sat still, her hands loose now, no longer clenched. The harshness in her posture had thinned into something fragile, something she didn't know how to hide anymore. I moved a little closer, letting the chair legs scrape gently so she wouldn't feel ambushed. I wasn't trying to outshine you, I said quietly. I was trying to show her, I nodded toward Kelsey, that getting older doesn't mean giving up your body, or your joy, or your right to feel sunlight. Brigitte let out a slow exhale. I know, I just didn't want her comparing us. She's 19, I reminded her softly. She's not comparing. She's learning. Kelsey knelt beside her mom, placing a hand on her shoulder. Mom, I don't look at Grandma and think she's trying to be young. I look at her and think, maybe getting older doesn't have to feel like disappearing. Brigitte swallowed hard, eyes shiny but steady now. I didn't realize how scared I was. Seeing you in that bikini, Mom, it felt like a reminder of everything I haven't allowed myself to be. Her voice cracked, softer this time, stripped of all the armor. I envy you. I hate admitting it, but I do. A warmth spread through my chest, not pride, not triumph, but recognition, the kind that only grows between women who have lived long enough to understand each other's wounds. I touched her hand gently. You haven't lost anything. You've just been too busy caring for everyone else to notice what's still yours. For the first time all afternoon, she didn't pull away. She let the weight of her hand settle in mine, tentative, but real. Behind us, the pool erupted with splashes and laughter again, life going on loud and messy and bright. But around our chairs, the air shifted, softer, less brittle. Brigitte looked down at our linked hands and whispered, barely audible, maybe I don't want to feel small anymore. You don't have to, I said. Not at 44, not ever. Kelsey leaned into both of us, her voice steady and warm. We can all stop hiding, starting today. And for the first time since I stepped out of the changing room, I felt something ease inside me. Not victory, just the quiet relief of being seen without apology. A ripple of laughter rose from the far side of the pool, the carefree kind that doesn't belong to heavy moments. It drifted toward us, softening the tense air. I let the sound settle before speaking, giving all three of us a moment to breathe. I finally slipped the towel off completely, folding it neatly beside me. The fabric's weight lifted from my lap, and with it, a familiar heaviness I'd carried for years. The sun touched my skin without hesitation, warm and steady. I didn't shrink from it this time. Brigitte noticed. Her eyes moved over me, not critical now, but thoughtful, as if she was trying to understand a language she'd forgotten she once knew. "When did you stop being afraid?" she asked quietly. The question wasn't sharp, it was raw. "When I realized my life didn't shrink just because my age increased," I said. "Growing older didn't take anything from me except the illusion that I needed permission to feel alive." Brigitte let out a shaky breath. "I've spent so long trying to be appropriate that I forgot how to feel anything." Kelsey sank onto the chair between us, linking her arms with ours. "You both deserve to feel good. I learned that from watching you, both of you." A ball bounced nearby, rolling to a stop at Brigitte's feet. A young boy ran over to grab it, pausing to smile up at her before darting off. She stared after him, her expression loosening into something softer, something almost childlike. "You know," she murmured, "I spent the whole morning choosing a one piece that covered everything. I thought, if I hid enough, maybe no one would notice I'm not 20 anymore." "Sweetheart," I said, turning toward her, "people notice when you hide far more than when you stand in the sun." Her lips trembled. "I don't even remember the last time I stood in the sun for myself." "Then today is a start," I whispered. She blinked hard, swallowing back the emotion rising in her throat. For once, she didn't hide it. She let it sit between us, fragile and honest. Kelsey squeezed her hand. "Mom, we can go shopping tomorrow, not to match Grandma, just to find something that makes you feel visible." Something in Brigitte cracked, quietly, cleanly. She nodded, a small motion but full of meaning. The music shifted again, the light turning softer as a cloud passed overhead. People moved around us, laughing, splashing, posing for pictures, living easily in their bodies. And for the first time since the party began, Brigitte didn't look away from them. She watched with curiosity instead of fear. She whispered, "Maybe I'm allowed to take up space too." And the moment didn't flare or burst. It simply settled, gentle, steady, like the beginning of something she didn't yet know she deserved. The late afternoon light softened, turning the surface of the pool into a sheet of muted silver. A hush fell briefly over the patio as the music switched tracks, a calmer melody, warm and steady, as if the day itself was exhaling. Brigitte leaned back in her chair, shoulders no longer locked in that defensive, rigid line. I watched her chest rise and fall, slower now, no longer fighting the moment. Her gaze drifted across the water, not in judgment, but in something like yearning. A group of young women splashed each other playfully near the deep end. One of them waved at Brigitte, a quick, friendly gesture. She startled slightly, then offered a shy smile in return. Small but real. A smile she hadn't worn all day. "You know," she said after a long pause, "I thought if I controlled everything, my clothes, my body, my image, I could control time too." I listened, letting her speak until the words ran out of her on their own. "But watching you walk out here..." She shook her head softly. "I didn't see someone trying to be young. I saw someone refusing to disappear, and it scared me because I realized how much I already had." Kelsey rested her chin on her mother's shoulder. "You don't have to disappear to be respected. And you don't have to be invisible to be dignified," I added. Brigitte's eyes glistened again, Not with anger now, but with a quiet understanding that felt heavier, deeper. She reached for my hand this time, her fingers wrapping around mine with intention. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "for projecting all of that onto you." I squeezed her hand gently. We all carry fears we don't know how to set down. Behind us, someone shook off water, droplets hitting the ground with soft taps. A girl shouted something lighthearted. A boy dove in, sending ripples racing toward the shallow end. Life went on, simple and loud and unbothered. Brigitte glanced down at our hands, hers younger but tenser, mine older but steadier. She sighed. "Maybe one day I'll have the courage to wear what I want without worrying who's watching." "You'll have that day," I said softly, "and when it comes, you'll feel the sun differently." Kelsey looked at both of us with an expression so tender it made my throat tighten. "This is why I wanted you here today, both of you. I wanted to celebrate your birthday, yes, but also the women who raised me." The breeze shifted again, warm this time, brushing past us like an embrace we didn't expect. For the first time, Brigitte didn't shrink from it. A soft crackle came from the grill as someone adjusted the flame, the smell of charred corn drifting across the patio. It was an ordinary sound, an ordinary scent, yet it grounded the moment in a way nothing else had managed to all afternoon. For once, nothing between us felt like it was teetering on the edge. Brigitte let her head fall back against the chair, not in defeat this time, but in release. A long, deep breath slipped out of her, as though she'd been holding it for 20 years. Kelsey nudged her gently, playful but careful, like she was reacquainting herself with a softer version of her mother. "I used to love swimming," Brigitte murmured, almost to herself. "When I was Kelsey's age, I lived in my swimsuit every summer. I never thought twice about who was watching." "What changed?" I asked, though part of me already knew. She shrugged, staring at her hands. "Life, kids, work." I kept shrinking myself to make room for everything else. She paused, voice dipping, and somewhere along the line I convinced myself that confidence had an expiration date. Kelsey leaned her head against her mother's shoulder. "Confidence doesn't age, Mom. Fear does." The words hung between us, quiet but sharp in their truth. Brigitte turned her gaze toward the shimmering water. A group of young men were laughing, splashing each other in clumsy enthusiasm. One slipped, sending a loud smack across the surface that made several people turn. Nobody judged him. They just laughed with him. Brigitte watched them with something like longing. "I don't want to be afraid of my own body anymore," she whispered. "I don't want to feel like I'm fading." I reached for her hand again, this time without hesitation. "You're not fading. You're rediscovering." A small, almost shy smile tugged at her lips. "Maybe I am." Then Kelsey stood, brushing water droplets from her skin. "Come on, Mom, dip your feet in with us." Brigitte blinked. "Right now?" "Yes," Kelsey said, grabbing her hand, "not to prove anything, just to feel something." Brigitte hesitated only a moment, then rose. Her movements were slow at first, cautious, but there was a spark, tiny but real, beneath the hesitation. As they walked toward the pool, the light caught the edges of the water, painting their reflections into long, bending shapes. A mother, a daughter, a granddaughter. 3 women standing at very different points in their lives, yet meeting each other halfway. And for the first time that day, I watched Brigitte step toward the water, not to hide, not to shrink, but to remember. The water lapped softly against the pool's edge as Kelsey waded in first, the small waves she made spreading outward in gentle rings. Brigitte paused at the steps, gripping the metal rail as if it might anchor her to the ground. Her breath fluttered, nervous, uncertain, but there was no anger left in it, only a quiet vulnerability she didn't bother hiding anymore. "Come on," Kelsey urged, her voice bright but tender. "Just your feet, that's all." Brigitte dipped one toe in, then the other. The water rippled, kissing her skin with a faint shimmer. She inhaled sharply, not from cold, but from the unfamiliar sensation of allowing herself to simply feel. I watched from my chair, my heart tightening with a mix of pride and something heavier, something like grief, but softened. A mother always knows when her child is crossing an invisible threshold, even if no one else sees it. Kelsey splashed her gently. See? Not so scary. Brigitte let out a small laugh, fragile, unsteady, but real. I forgot it feels like this. Like what? I asked. She looked over her shoulder at me, eyes catching the fading sunlight. Like I'm allowed to take up space without apologizing. Those words, simple, trembling, stirred something deep inside me. How many years had she spent shrinking herself? How many times had she let fear dictate where she stood, what she wore, who she believed she was allowed to be? As if reading my thoughts, Kelsey wrapped an arm around her mother's shoulders. You don't have to earn joy, Mom. Just claim it. For a moment, everything softened. The air, the water, even the light seemed to bend around them. Brigitte closed her eyes, letting the water reach her ankles, then her calves. She didn't step further, but she didn't step back either. Behind us, someone dropped a beach ball, its hollow bounce echoing across the concrete. A dog barked from the neighbor's yard. A girl nearby asked her friend for sunscreen. Life moved on, unremarkable and ordinary. But in that small, shimmering corner of the pool, something important was opening. Not loudly, not dramatically, but with the quiet precision of a lock finally turning after years of being stuck. Brigitte took one more step into the water, deeper this time. Kelsey squeezed her hand. There you go. And the woman who had spent the whole party hiding from the world allowed herself to be seen, not by strangers, but by the two people who mattered most. The light shifted as the sun dipped lower, turning the water a soft blend of gold and blue. I walked closer to the pool's edge, my feet brushing against warm concrete. The laughter around us faded into a gentle hum, a backdrop rather than a spotlight. Brigitte stood knee-deep now, her hands just beneath the surface. The water clung to her skin like tiny beads of courage. She looked smaller somehow, smaller in fear, not in presence. There was space around her again, space she hadn't allowed herself in years. Kelsey drifted beside her, hair dripping, cheeks glowing from sun and joy. She nudged her mother lightly. You can go as far as you want, she whispered, or stop right there. Either one is brave. Brigitte let out a trembling breath. Why does this feel like the first time I've done something for myself in, I don't know how long? Because it was, and she knew it. I eased down to sit on the edge, letting my legs slip into the water. The coolness rose over my shins, soothing and familiar. Sometimes, I said, watching the ripples spread, we forget we're allowed to enjoy our own lives. Brigitte's eyes flickered downward. I've been so busy trying to stay appropriate that I forgot how to feel free. Appropriate for whom? I asked softly. She didn't answer, not because she didn't know, but because the truth was settling in too heavily to name yet. Her throat bobbed, her eyes glistened. Kelsey leaned her forehead gently against her mother's arm. You don't have to prove anything, Mom. Not to me, not to anyone. A beat passed, then another. Finally, Brigitte's shoulders loosened. She lifted her face toward the fading sky, letting the evening breeze touch her cheeks. Her voice was small, almost weightless. I don't want to hide anymore. I reached for her hand beneath the surface, water swirling around our fingers. Then don't, I whispered. Behind us, chatter rose again, plate clattering, a bass beat from the speakers, someone calling for more ice. But none of it touched the moment forming between the three of us, a moment stitched with understanding rather than conflict. Brigitte looked at the water, then at me, then at her daughter. Something in her steadied. Maybe, she said slowly, I've spent too much time telling myself who I can't be. And not enough time becoming who you already are, I replied. She closed her eyes, letting the words sink in. When she opened them again, they weren't frightened anymore. Just honest, just present. And for the first time all day, she truly smiled. The evening air cooled as the sun slipped behind the rooftops, casting long shadows across the patio. Lights flicked on along the fence, soft, amber, gentle, turning the pool into a quiet mirror that held every color of the fading day. I watched Brigitte's reflection shimmer beside mine, two silhouettes drifting closer to themselves. She moved a little deeper into the water, not much, just enough for it to touch the hem of her swimsuit. Her fingertips trailed under the surface, creating small circles that slowly widened before melting into the stillness. Kelsey climbed onto the pool ledge beside me, tucking her knees to her chest. "I've never seen you two like this," she said softly. "Not fighting, not tense, just here." Her words sat between us like something fragile. Brigitte looked up, cheeks flushed. Not from embarrassment now, but from the release of something long held. "I didn't realize how much of myself I'd been holding back," she admitted. "How much I kept trying to manage who Mom was instead of letting myself feel anything." "You don't have to manage me," I said gently. "I'm still growing. So are you." A quiet laugh escaped her, surprised and warm. "I haven't felt like I was growing in years. I thought I'd already finished." "No one finishes," I whispered. "Not while they're still breathing." A small splash sounded as Kelsey slid her feet into the water, kicking lightly. Ripples reached Brigitte and brushed against her legs, merging with her own movements. She watched them, thoughtful, her posture looser than it had been all day. Behind us, people began gathering plates, the low murmur of cleaning up carrying across the patio. Someone opened another bag of chips. A girl called out for her towel. It was all so mundane, yet the air around us felt changed, softer, deeper, rewoven. Brigitte moved toward me slowly, water swirling around her knees. "Mom," she said, voice nearly a whisper, "I was cruel earlier, not because of you, because of everything I've been afraid to face." I reached up, touching the back of her hand. Fear makes people rigid, but it doesn't make them unlovable. Her breath caught. A single tear slipped down her cheek, not heartbreaking, not dramatic, just honest. She didn't wipe it away this time. She let it fall. "I don't want to be the woman who hides," she said. "Not from the world and not from you." "You don't have to be," I answered. Kelsey slid her hand into her mother's, linking their fingers, anchoring her. "We don't hide anymore," she murmured. "None of us." The pool lights shifted from pale gold to soft blue, casting gentle, moving shadows over our skin. Brigitte looked down at the water as if seeing her reflection for the first time, not as something to criticize, but as something she could claim again. And in that still, breath-held moment, she whispered, "I think I'm ready to see myself." The pool lights shimmered brighter as the sky deepened into evening blue, flickering softly across the water like scattered pieces of moonlight. I eased myself down until both feet were fully submerged, the coolness sending a calm rush up my legs. The quiet around us felt earned, hard-won after a day of sharp edges and old wounds. Brigitte moved closer, the water folding gently around her as she waded toward the shallow end. She looked different now, not younger, not transformed, but unburdened, like someone who'd finally stopped running from her own reflection. Kelsey floated on her back a few feet away, arms stretched wide, staring up at the sky. "This is the best birthday I've ever had," she said, drifting lazily. "Not because of the party, because of this." Brigitte blinked at her. "Because of what exactly?" "Because you two are finally seeing each other," Kelsey answered without opening her eyes. "Not as roles, as women." Her words landed softly, like something long overdue. Brigitte looked at me then, really looked, not comparing, not judging, not shrinking, just seeing. "I've been so afraid of becoming you," she admitted, voice low. "Not because I don't admire you, but because I thought age meant losing everything I recognize about myself." "And now?" I asked. She swallowed, her gaze dropping to where her fingers brushed the water's surface. "Now I realize I lost myself by trying not to age at all." The honesty struck me with a quiet ache. Motherhood often means being a mirror, sometimes gentle, sometimes harsh. Today she'd finally stepped close enough to see her own face in mine without flinching. "I spent years believing visibility belonged to younger women," Brigitte continued, her voice softening. "But you walked out here today like you didn't owe the world an apology, and it terrified me." A small wave rolled against her knees as Kelsey swam by, lifting her chin just enough to catch her mother's eyes. "You don't owe the world an apology either," she said. "You just think you do." Brigitte's breath trembled. She reached for my wrist, not grabbing, just holding. "How did you learn to stop caring what people think?" "I didn't," I answered truthfully. "I just learned to care about myself more." A silence settled, gentle, reflective. Behind us, someone lit sparklers for the younger guests. Tiny crackles filled the air, casting quick flashes of gold across the water. One spark caught Brigitte's attention, her face glowing with each flicker. "It's strange," she murmured. "I always thought you were the one holding on to the past, but I'm the one who never let go of who I thought I needed to be." "And now?" I asked. She looked up at me, eyes steady. "Now I want to grow. Maybe not beautifully, but honestly." Kelsey swam to us, looping an arm around her mother and another around me. "You two are my favorite people," she whispered, "even when you're messy." Brigitte leaned into her daughter, letting herself be held, not as a fragile woman, not as a defensive one, but simply as herself. And in that soft, shimmering moment, something old finally loosened its grip. The sparklers burned low one by one, their glow softening until only thin trails of smoke curled upward into the cooling air. The pool quieted as the younger guests drifted toward the snack table, leaving small ripples fading into stillness. I stepped a little deeper, letting the water reach the tops of my thighs. The temperature didn't shock me anymore. It welcomed me, steady and familiar. Brigitte lingered near the steps, fingers tracing the rail. She wasn't afraid now, she was thinking. Her expression held the delicate mix of exhaustion and awakening that comes after dropping a weight you didn't realize you'd been carrying. Kelsey splashed gently as she floated closer. "Mom," she said softly, "you don't have to change everything tonight. Just let yourself breathe." Brigitte looked at her daughter with an expression I'd almost forgotten she had. Open, unguarded, the way she used to look when she was 16 and believed the world might still listen to her. "I don't know who I am without all the rules I made for myself," she whispered. "Then stop living by rules," I said. "Live by truth." She blinked at me, water shimmering around her knees. "And what is my truth?" "That you're allowed to be seen, not as perfect, not as young, just as human." A quiet breeze lifted strands of her hair. She didn't tuck them behind her ear like she usually did to keep herself neat. She let them fall where they wanted. Nearby, a group of teens laughed as they posed for one more group photo. Flashlight beams flickered across the patio, catching the wet shimmer on Brigitte's arms. She stared at them, not with jealousy this time, but with a kind of wistful acceptance. "I've been competing with a ghost," she murmured. "The girl I used to be." "And losing," I replied gently, "because she isn't real anymore." Her lips parted, breath unsteady. Kelsey swam closer, wrapping an arm around her mother's waist, guiding her a half-step deeper into the water. The movement was small, almost imperceptible, but it changed something, a shift, a letting go. "I don't want to feel ashamed of aging," Brigitte said. I want to feel alive. Then start here, Kelsey whispered. Right now. Brigitte closed her eyes, letting the water surround her. When she opened them again, they glistened, not with fear this time, but with resolve. She turned to me. Mom, thank you for not shrinking. I reached for her hand beneath the water, our fingers brushing lightly. I spent too many years shrinking for others. I'm done teaching that lesson. A long silence followed, warm, peaceful, the kind that makes the heart soften without warning. The sky deepened into navy blue, the first few stars peeking through. And standing there, knee-deep in water with the people who defined 3 generations of my life, I felt something settle inside me, a quiet, steady truth. We weren't just healing from a fight. We were growing into each other, again. The sky dimmed into a deep velvet blue, the kind that makes the edges of everything soften, rooftops, tree branches, even the echoes of distant laughter. A few string lights flickered on above the patio, casting warm circles across the ground. Their glow danced along the surface of the pool, turning the water into a quiet tapestry of moving light. Brigitte eased her hand from the rail and let it drift at her side, half submerged. The water held her gently, lifting some invisible burden with every small ripple. She looked lighter now, not carefree, not quite healed, but unguarded enough for the night to settle around her without resistance. Kelsey hoisted herself onto the ledge, her feet still kicking playfully in the water. She leaned back on her palms, hair dripping down her spine. You know, she said softly, I used to think getting older meant losing everything fun. She glanced between us with a content smile. Now I'm starting to think it just means learning how to enjoy things differently. Brigitte let out a soft laugh, quiet but genuine. If this is learning, she murmured, I think I skipped a few chapters. You can always go back, I said, slipping my hand into the water beside hers. Life isn't a straight line. It loops, it revisits, it opens. A hush passed over the world for a moment, just the soft lapping of water, the faint hum of the filter, and our steady breathing. Brigitte looked down at her reflection again, but something had changed. She wasn't studying flaws. She wasn't comparing. She wasn't shrinking. She was recognizing herself. Mom, she said suddenly, turning toward me, I judged you because I wasn't ready to see myself honestly. I'm sorry. I held her gaze, steady and warm. Being afraid isn't a crime. Staying afraid is. Her breath caught in her throat, but she didn't look away. Then Kelsey reached out, linking our hands, hers warm and youthful, ours weathered in different ways. She held us like she was binding something back together. Promise me something, Kelsey whispered, both of you. We waited. Don't hide anymore. Not from each other. Not from yourselves. Her voice wavered with emotion. I can't celebrate my birthday every year watching the 2 women I love most pretend they're smaller than they really are. Brigitte pressed her free hand gently against her daughter's cheek. I'll try, she murmured. Honestly. I squeezed both their hands beneath the water. Then we'll try together. A soft wind swept across the patio, carrying the faint scent of chlorine and garden soil. Someone switched on a lantern near the grill, and its glow reached us, warm, steady, forgiving. Brigitte exhaled, long, slow, like something inside her had finally loosened enough to breathe again. She stepped forward once more, the water rising just above her knees. And in that tender, quiet moment, she didn't apologize for the space she took. She filled it. The evening air was thick with the scent of sunscreen and damp towels, the pool quiet except for the faint trickle of the filter. Brigitte lingered near the shallow end, letting the water lap softly against her thighs. Her shoulders were no longer rigid. The tension had melted into something hesitant, fragile, but real. Kelsey waded closer, nudging her mother with a playful tap. You know, she said softly, this doesn't have to be dramatic. Just enjoy it. Brigitte's eyes followed the water's shimmer, watching the reflections bend and twist. "I forgot how to enjoy things without worrying," she admitted. Her voice was low, almost a whisper. "You haven't forgotten," I said. "You just needed permission." My hand skimmed the surface, the coolness touching both our fingers as I gestured toward her. Permission to take up space, to be seen, to exist. A soft giggle rose from the kids nearby, a sound of joy unconcerned with age or expectation. Brigitte's gaze flicked toward them briefly, then back to me. I've spent so long controlling how I look, how I act. I forgot what it feels like to just be. Kelsey reached her arm around her mother. "Then start now," she whispered. "Don't hide." Brigitte exhaled slowly, letting the water cradle her, the tension rolling off in gentle waves. The fear had softened, replaced with something tentative but freeing. Her eyes glimmered with a newfound clarity, a realization that courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it glimmers quietly in the act of standing still. I smiled at her, quietly proud. "You don't need to be anyone else, just you. That's enough." For a moment, nothing else mattered. The party, the sun, the music. There was only the quiet pulse of water, the steady presence of love, and the gentle acknowledgement that we were all learning how to step fully into ourselves, together. Brigitte's lips curved into a small, genuine smile, and I knew she had reclaimed herself for the first time in years. The lanterns along the patio flickered gently, casting elongated shadows over the pool deck. Brigitte stepped slowly into the center of the shallow end, letting the water rise to her knees. Her breath was measured, steadying herself against a lifetime of habits that had taught her to shrink, to minimize, to hide. Kelsey circled around her mother, laughter light, teasing. "See, nothing bad happens when you wear what makes you feel good," she said, voice soft but filled with conviction. "Nothing at all." Brigitte glanced at me, a faint vulnerability flashing through her eyes. "I didn't know I could feel this free," she admitted, letting the words tumble into the quiet air. The tension in her jaw and shoulders was gone, replaced with a delicate openness, as if the water had washed away more than just the day's heat. "You've been hiding from yourself," I said gently. "Not from anyone else. You just forgot what it means to exist fully." She closed her eyes, letting her face tilt toward the lingering sunlight. "I never realized how much fear had shaped me," she whispered. "Fear of judgment, fear of looking bold, fear of being visible." Kelsey reached out, linking arms with her mother and grandmother, connecting the 3 generations in a circle of quiet solidarity. "We all deserve to be visible," she said softly. "No one gets a pass from life because of age." Brigitte's lips curved into a small, tentative smile. "I think I finally understand," she said. "I don't need to shrink anymore. Not for anyone." A breeze lifted her damp hair, brushing it against her cheeks. She let the wind carry the strands freely, no longer attempting to tame or hide them. The water rippled gently around her legs, reflecting the soft gold and blue hues of the evening. She took a deep breath, letting the weight of the day fall away. For the first time, she was standing firmly in her own presence, not apologizing, not justifying, simply being. Kelsey leaned in close. "You look beautiful, Mom. Always have." And in that moment, Brigitte's eyes glimmered with acceptance, a quiet, unshakable acknowledgement of herself. The last rays of sunlight dipped behind the rooftops, leaving the pool bathed in soft twilight. Brigitte stood, waist deep, shoulders relaxed, eyes fixed on the water. Every ripple mirrored a small fragment of liberation, her liberation, from years of self-imposed restraint. Kelsey splashed gently near her, laughter easy, playful. "You see?" she called. "You don't need permission to enjoy yourself." Brigitte let her lips curve in a tentative smile, a mix of relief and disbelief. I've spent decades fearing judgment, she whispered, afraid of how I look, how I'm perceived, even by you. She glanced at me, eyes softened. I didn't realize how much I hid from everyone, including myself. You never should have hidden from yourself, I replied. The world can't give you permission. Only you can. The breeze lifted the edge of her towel, forgotten on the deck. She ignored it, letting the water warm her legs, letting her posture straighten. The sun was gone, replaced by the gentle glow of string lights, casting a warm reflection across the water. Brigitte exhaled slowly. I understand what you and Kelsey have been trying to show me all day. Confidence doesn't expire. Age doesn't diminish it. Being seen is not a crime. Kelsey reached for her mother's hand, linking it with mine. We're here, she said softly, so you don't have to feel invisible. The sound of laughter, distant splashes, and faint music surrounded us, a reminder that life went on, full of movement, mistakes, joy, and connection. But in our small circle, time had slowed. A grandmother, a mother, and a daughter, 3 generations learning together the quiet power of presence. Brigitte's eyes glimmered with something new, acceptance, a recognition that she could exist fully in her own body, her own skin, and her own time. She squeezed our hands, steady, real, and unafraid. The pool shimmered with the last light of day, reflecting the 3 of us, no longer shrinking, no longer hiding, fully seen, fully alive. And for the first time, the 3 of us smiled together.